Welcome back. This video will explain how to work with financial list views or spreadsheets. HearForm stores its data in something called tables or lists. A table is very similar to a family tree hierarchy. At the top of this hierarchy is the patient's table. Everything revolves around the patient in our system, and the patient can have one or more addresses, one or more phone numbers, hearing instruments, invoices, audiograms, recalls, notes, etc. Within the invoice area, again, an unlimited number of invoices per patient, well, each invoice can have a number of line items or charges and also a number of payments. So it's important to understand that the data is stored in a hierarchy, and what we're going to be looking at is how the data is easily manipulated by using the table view. With all that said, let's take a look at how tables or lists can be used in HearForm Pro. From the home screen, I'm going to click the Invoicing button. And then I can see that I have an invoice list, line item list, and payment list button. And I'm going to go to the invoice list so that I can take a look at some of the features available here. As you can see, we have a lot of columns and rows here. Columns across the top are essentially field names, such as office assigned, the clinician assigned, who referred them, and some financial fields over here. And down the side are essentially individual invoices. So I want to narrow this group down, and I can do a find or a search or query by clicking the find button. And in the date of invoice field, I can stretch that a little bit so you can see it better. In the date of invoice field, I'm going to do a search for the month of 11 or November. So if the month is in the year that you're currently in, you don't have to put the rest, because when I leave the field, watch what happens, it adds the rest for me. So 11/*/2018. We'll pull up all invoices created for that month. Let's go ahead and do that by performing the find with this button at the top middle. And doing so, we'll now pull up, in this case, 350 invoices out of 3,893. Now, they're not in any particular order. It tells me they're found but unsorted. That means they're not arranged in any other way than the order that they were added to the system. So I can sort or arrange things very easily by clicking the top of a column and sorting from the menu here. So I've sorted now based on the clinician, or I can sort based on the assigned office here. But I want to teach you a couple things that you can also do behind the scenes. This little arrow that appears when you hold the mouse over it here will allow me to add some subtotals. So for example, for a text field, not a number field, but something like the assigned office, I can add a count. And let's take a look at that. What that will do is count up all the individual items in that particular column. So in this case, 122 invoices for Palm Beach, and for Pensacola we have 66. I can do the same over here. Let me scroll over to the right just a little bit. And I can do the same here in the balance due field. I can create a trailing subtotal. Notice all the other choices we have. We have count, but we also have total, running total, average, running count, minimum, maximum, standard deviation, and a fraction of total. I'm going to do the total up here, which is the most common. And it takes a minute sometimes to kick in, but what that will do is we'll add up all of the totals for that period, for that sorted column. So in this case, for one location, let's scroll back to the left, for Palm Beach, we have a total balance due amount of $204,000, and down here, $126,000 for Pensacola. So you can add that balance due, that total to the balance due column, or you can actually add it to a number of other columns. Sometimes those options are not going to be available. Sometimes they are. You just have to look in the menu and see if they're grayed out. So you can easily add things like that. So you can easily do a search by clicking here, as you saw I did before, the number 11, but I could say I just want to find this particular office location, and I just want to find for this particular clinician. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to get any hits. We'll find out. I guess we did. 24 up by the pie chart circle there. 24 invoices are for this clinician. And again, I can sort or arrange by a variety of different things here. Most of these look like they're direct mail, so that wouldn't help to sort by that. But I could sort or arrange by the referral source. And let me do that here, and again, we don't have a count there, so I could add a count here, and that will count up the number. Now, if I happen to remove something, I want to show you something there. Remember over here we have 6 assigned office locations. It's showing me, but that's because I'm sorting it by the referral source. I'm not sorting it by the office. I've isolated just Boynton Beach, for example. But if I remove something from here, I'm just going to backspace over that. Now notice it says 5, and then we have a new one that says 0. If I remove again, it shows 4, and again 0 here. So I'm going to sort now by the office location, and we have these blanks here, and when I look down here it says 22, but there really are 24 actual invoices. Why would it say a count of 22? And that's because 2 of these items don't have anything in them, so it's not going to count those. So again, I can put that there, I can resort, and now you can see that I have 1 of these, 1 of those, 4 of these, and 18 of these. So just kind of play around with that and you'll get used to the sorting option there. You can also unsort your rows very quickly, which means put them back in the order that they were originally entered, but not sorted or arranged by any other category. So just by clicking that button, we can do that. We can also export a group of records, 24 records here, or again, let's just do another search. As you might recall, if I click the triangle to the right of the magnifying glass, I have some other options here, and I can say, well, okay, let's just do this search right here for everything in November, and then I can come over here and export an automatic export, which will send information to an Excel file based on something we predetermined for you, popular fields or columns. You can export whatever's being displayed, or it will ask you, and it takes longer to do it that way. Let's go ahead and do an automatic export, and it'll show us a limited view in just a minute. So as you can see, let me just put this within the window here. As you can see, I have this information right here. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize these 2 windows that I have open, and that's how you can export things pretty easily there. Which brings up another question. We may want to export a group of records but not show a lot of these columns. So in the upper right here, I can modify. When I click the word modify up here, it gives me this list that I can elongate by stretching it up or down here. But I can actually decide what I want to display on the screen, temporarily or permanently, or semi-permanently. So for example, if I didn't want to see the key invoice number and didn't want to see the discounts, I can highlight that and highlight all of them and hit the space bar, for example, and it hides those, or I can uncheck those. And as you can see underneath, it's kind of hiding individual things. So I can, again, hide a whole bunch of them at once. And now I just have a very limited view here. So we'll just do a couple more. And actually, I'll just, sorry, there's a bit of a delay. I'll just click OK. And now you see I have a very limited amount here. I actually want to hide the status as well. Forgot to do that. Okay, so I have just maybe 5 or 6, 7 fields here, columns. And so when I click the export button here, I can export the displayed columns. And in this case, it's telling me that I can't do that because the previous export was still open in Excel. So I got a little warning saying, I can't do it until you close that file, which is a good mistake to make because that may happen to you as well. Let's try it again. We'll go ahead and export the displayed columns, and now it's allowing me to overwrite the previously created document. Keep in mind that it's going to overwrite it with a name, in this case called HearForm Invoices at the top middle. You see that. So if you want to keep a previous export, please rename that export before continuing. Otherwise, it's going to overwrite it with your next export if it's an automatic export. So notice then that the columns here, the rows are the found set of records, the 350 that I previously had isolated, and 351 because of the header there. And then the columns themselves are just what I asked it to send me. So you can be very specific in the information that you send. So let's close that, minimize that extra one. And that gives you an idea then of how you can export or isolate records. You can also click some buttons on this particular screen. Let's start here. I can go to the very first row, the very last row. It's very similar to scrolling up and down with the wheel on your mouse or grabbing the scroll bar right here. Sometimes it's easier just to click first or last here. You also can grab the mouse here and excuse me, this little slider bar here, or go back and forth one row at a time. Or you can even type in, if you remember it was on row 200, I can type 200 and hit enter and it goes to the 200th row, just like that. So that's what those buttons do. The Find Balances button will take my whole group of records. It may take quite some time to find all the balances, but then it will pull up, in this case, 3,000 records that have a balance, because this is just a lot of sample data. In the same way I can click Find Credits. I've removed all my credits so that wouldn't work here. And I can show all just by clicking that button. It's very similar to clicking the Show All Invoices up here. You can also omit if you wanted to omit a particular group. So everyone that was a particular kind of insurance company, let's say private pay, I can omit that selection, or I could constrain. Let's show all again. Actually, let's just take a quick look here at our private pay. If I can find this, I'll pull up my status and my payer type. Let's click OK. So now you can see that I don't have a lot of payer types in here, but if I wanted to narrow this down to just insurance, I could choose insurance and constrain to just that, and there's only two, but you get the idea that you can constrain your previous found set. So you may have to show all invoices first or isolate a group for a particular month, but you can either omit the selection in this window here, or you can constrain to it, which means take the previous group that you have, not all records, the previous found set, and constrain it, make it smaller to isolate the found set of records to just whatever it is you want. So this gives you an idea of how the invoicing list works. Let's go over to the line item list, and we have some other choices here. And here, very similar principle. You can isolate a group first by, let's say I wanted to find a group of records that are just for Jennifer. And let's see how many we'll get. So we have 13 invoices, or excuse me, not invoices now, but we're in line items. So she may only have 2 or 3 invoices, but these are her charges or line items. And so I can see those here. And again, just like before, I can sort or arrange by a particular category. And in this case, they're all the same clinician, the same office assignment, but I think you get the idea there. So we can show just positive quantities or negative quantities if you're wanting to pull up a series of records that show returns or just sales and not include returns. We're going to cover that in a subsequent video on reporting. And we'll also cover the summary report. The sort options here allow us to sort or arrange very easily by clicking these buttons here. Play around with those. I think it'll make sense. You can sort or unsort very easily or arrange your records there. And just like before, you can export that found set of records. Let's do an automatic export real quick. And what that will do is open up in Excel. And as you can see, it takes whatever found set of records that you've isolated and makes it easy to do that. So let's just do one more search real quick. I'm going to do a search based on 11. And so I've isolated 732, and if I export those, I may want to sort or arrange them first. Let's just do that, for example, by product ID, or let's go a step further here and look underneath the surface here and see, okay, well, we have item, supplier, circuit size off to the side, so I can actually scroll over a little bit. And now I can see, okay, let's sort these by supplier, for example. And so I have all my different diagnostics in a row here. And when I export those, let's do that, an automatic export, then those rows and columns will be sorted exactly in the same way that they were when we exported them. So they'll be in the same order that FileMaker HearForm had them showing available. So let's close that there. And finally, let's look back now at our payment list. Again, not quite as many options here, but I can go to the first row, the last row. I can do searches for an individual. Let's just do a quick search. For example, if I did a search for the word Mary, Well, then there are 111 payments here from somebody named Mary. Now, you wouldn't necessarily do that, but you get the idea. I can right-click and find all my Palm Beach, or I could say I want to find everyone for a particular period of time, like the month of November, and then sort or arrange them. So I have all my Boynton Beach here, but I have already created this total, $16,200 there. I've already created that total here, and it will remain there unless I remove that. So just different ways to play around with this. Again, we'll talk about going to the summary in a subsequent video that's more focused on financial reporting. So as you can see, these lists for the finances are very similar to going to the tables area where all of our lists are stored. And we focus today on the invoicing list, the line item list, and the payment list. But these lists are very similar to an address list, which shows all the patients' addresses, or any other list, such as your chart notes, so you can see all your notes. And it's just a nice way to be able to interact with all of your data in a way that might be meaningful for you. And again, keep in mind that the list right now, it shows only 2 records, but there really are 3,893 total. And I can either show all invoices here, or I can isolate a group by hitting the magnifying glass and typing any information in a desired field in any combination. So hopefully that will explain our list a little bit better. Play around with them and see if you enjoy the power of using tables.